I think it's a very, I would say the sunchoke is an aggressive colonizer, right? It's really good at taking a space and turning it into a home. Hey, it's Greg here with MaritimeGardening.com, and I'm just here digging up some of these sunchoke roots, and I've got videos on how to plant these and stuff. But I thought, as I was doing this, I didn't come out here to film anything. My mind started wandering as I was picking these, and you know, I remember when I made my first videos about these things, people would comment and say, "Oh, they're invasive, they'll take over your whole garden. Oh my God, my garden got taken over by them. They've ruined my garden, they're everywhere," so on and so forth. Yeah, I guess they can do that, but you know, it's a question of how active you are in staying on top of them, right? So I mean, I planted them here last year. I dug up almost all of them, put a handful back, and a handful have grown back, sort of thing, right? I really don't want them here anymore, so I've got them growing in another place. I just don't find this to be a good place to have them. I've got various kind of perennials here, blackberries growing, and I don't think it's good for the blackberries for me to be digging in around their roots every year, kind of messing them up. So I do sort of want to make this end this location as a sunchoke location. I don't want it to be a sunchoke location anymore. So if this is a truly invasive weed, that would be a very hard thing to do. I think it's a very, I would say the sunchoke is an aggressive colonizer, right? It's really good at taking a space and turning it into a home and sort of keeping it. You know, you plant one piece like this, and you pretty much get a handful, right, of root. That's what makes them such a great piece of mylar there. That's what makes them such a great thing to plant in a garden, because they're so productive, and you get so much back from them. And there's garlic, unharvested garlic right there. I doubt these will amount to much. Anyway, let me show you another place where I had sunchokes growing last year, and I had a really good harvest, and I planted some even. Let me show you here. So right here where I do the talking segment of a lot of my videos now, so remember last year, this garden, when I say last summer, I mean the summer of 2018. My garden was not, the walking paths weren't mulched with sand, they were mulched with wood chips. And the great thing about having wood chip walking paths is that you can grow things in them. So right here next to my little bench here, I had a little cluster of sunchokes growing. I'd say I planted about 8 or 9 little, 1-inch pieces in a circle next to this thing here. And I had a bunch growing, and at the end of the season I pulled out a bowl full, like, good size, basically this much. I pulled that much out of the ground here growing underneath my walking path. And then I put about 9 back in the ground last fall. And then I forgot all about them, to tell you the truth. And this spring I put all this sand mulch out, and the sunchoke started trying to grow out of the sand. And the problem with that is that I didn't want to be, basically you don't want to be harvesting. There's no way to harvest sunchokes in a sand pathway without turning, mixing the soil that's underneath the sand in with the sand. It wouldn't become a very good a weedless walking path if I'm perpetually mixing it up. So basically I decided I didn't want sunchokes growing there anymore, even though the reason I grew them here is just pleasant to have these nice pretty flowers right next to me when I'm sitting here. So anyway, I decided I didn't want them anymore. So what did I do to eradicate the invasive sunchokes that were growing next to my bench here, which in full sun? So I mean, you couldn't pick a better spot to try to grow something. All I did was, whenever I saw a shoot, I just nip it off. You think about it, any sort of Any plant that stores its energy in a rhizome, I think this is a rhizome, could be a tuber, I don't know, I can never remember these technical terms. This is an energy storage device for a sunchoke, right? So the sunchoke makes this huge plant, gathers a lot of energy from the sun and through photosynthesis and so on and so forth, and it stores the energy into this for next year, right? And next year this thing will send out shoots and make more sunchoke roots and more sunchoke plants. And that's the reason you can eat these, because they're storing energy. So it's stored a certain amount of energy, and that energy is meant to go all in on producing a plant. If the plant uses its energy to make, if the rhizome or the root or whatever we're going to call this uses its energy to make a plant, and you keep killing that plant, it's going to keep using its energy to make more, and you're going to keep killing it. So, if that plant doesn't grow to full height and doesn't spend a season gathering energy, it's going to exhaust the root, right? So it sent up shoots for a little while, and then it just stopped. Now, I don't know, and here, I'll show you. There's nothing happening down here. There's no, move the camera a little bit. Try to zoom in a little bit there, but there is no evidence that I ever had, a number of sunchokes growing there, right? Now, it may be the case that just through whatever mechanism controls the growth pattern of the sunchoke, that the root gave up for that year, and somehow through whatever mechanism it has, saved a little to try next year. That's possible. So if it tries next year, I'll just we'll see, But I'll try to remember to follow up on that. Right now it's November 2019, and I haven't seen any shoots or anything here for a couple months. Basically since sometime in July, the plant gave up. Now, that either means that the root that's underneath there have all died because they exhausted themselves, or they just gave up for that year and are saving a little for next year. And if that happens, I'll nip them off again. Eventually, if the plant can't gather energy from the sun, it just can't live, right? So, what am I trying to say? There are invasive plants. Mint's one I would never put in a garden. I would never put mint in a vegetable garden. That's a plant that travels. This one tends to just orbit out. At least it's my experience anyway. It tends to just orbit out from where you've planted it. So if you're on top of it, you can manage it. Something like mint, it seems to just travel. It just goes. It gets everywhere. When you get that in there, you're not getting it out. So, if someone says something is invasive, I think almost anyone that's had a problem with something seems to think that problem's insurmountable for anyone else. And I can understand why people might think that way. But some things can be managed, and some things can't. Sunchokes, I think it's one of those things you actually can manage in the soil in your garden. I don't think you need to put it in a flower pot or something like that. I don't think you need to worry about it if you're going to put it in your garden. Because I'm not finding it just showing up everywhere. It's sort of growing where I put it. As long as you take it all out every year and just put a little, so this time of year, you take it all out and you just put like pieces like this big back in, right? If you're doing that, you're controlling the population in a sense, right? You've got something that wants to multiply exponentially, and you're eating 90% of that multiplication, and you're just putting 10% back in, right? It seems to multiply by a factor of 10 every year. So in that sense, if you don't do anything, yeah, it's going to take over. But if you're taking 90% every year, then it's you're sort of on top of it. So yeah, I don't find it to be that overwhelming of a thing to manage in the garden. I got another place where some's growing. How about we go harvest? I didn't get enough for my meal, so as long as we got the camera running, how about I go harvest some out of there? This is a place where I planted them where the soil is very poor. So let's see what kind of results you can get from growing sunchokes in really poor soil. Here's a silly little garden that I made for my kids a number of years ago. It's outside the garden enclosure, so there's only certain things you can grow here. And at the time, I didn't really have any soil, so I just used some stuff from the woods here, spruce forest, so it's not good soil at all. It's right next to this little playhouse I made for the kids. I watched that PBS documentary Alone in the Wilderness and got all inspired and decided to make a little tiny log house. And boy, making log houses is not easy. Just making this little crappy version of one took me a summer's worth of weekends and just about killed me. Anyway, yeah, here's this little I decided to make this a sunchoke garden because the deer and all those things seem to leave them alone. So, and because the soil was so poor, was interested to see, because sunchokes seem to grow in just about anything. So yeah, I decided to see what the result was here. They didn't get very big here. Like sometimes, in my garden with the good soil, they'll get like 6 feet high. So yeah, curious to see what I get here in this lousy soil. Well, still not bad. Those ones look good. Yeah. So this garden hasn't been like, I literally put these in here this time last year and have not done a thing in this garden. I haven't weeded it, haven't watered it, haven't done nothing. Seems to have, this is a sunchoke. You can tell the soil, it's underneath a fairly big spruce tree, so I think it somehow just doesn't get good rain because it's underneath this big spruce tree. But yeah, I'm still getting sunchokes. You really can't beat these things for their tolerance of poor soils. And yeah, I'm sure I get a bigger, better yield with better soil, but for me, if you're planting in poor soil and you're getting a yield, that's good. I'm happy. That's all I want. So I mean, it's the time of year to harvest these sorts of things. They're good and dead, and we're getting cold nights with frost and stuff. Look how white that one is. It's the time of year to do that. And I basically have like a month's worth of sunchokes here. We only eat them so often. They're kind of gassy. I mean, they taste. I love eating them. The kids love eating them, but they are a bit on the gassy side of things. But cause a little bit of. And there's different ways to cook them and so on and so forth. And I'm sure I'm going to get 1,000 suggestions from comments of how to prepare them in a way that minimizes the gas. I've pretty much tried them every which way from Sunday, and with everything you can imagine, I still find them to be a bit gassy. So, but everybody's digestive system is different, I suppose. Anyway, they taste great, and they're darn easy to grow. Right, that's enough for a meal for sure for my family, anyway. Yeah, so I'll continue to work my way across this garden. And once I've finished a section like this, you just take some of the smaller ones, especially the ones that look like they're going to be a bit of a drag to clean. Right? And you just stick them back in. And that's ready for next year sort of thing. One great thing about this plant, they're very well adapted to the northern climate. They don't mind the cold at all, so you don't have to worry about them. And so that section's planted. I'm all out of mulch, but I will mulch this heavily before the winter comes. Over the next couple of weeks, as I'm able to source mulch, I will mulch this, because the mulch this was mulched with grass clippings, I believe, and that is completely, very little of that left. Just a little bit of the original mulch on there. But talk about an easy garden. I mean, all I do is come out here and pull enough out of the ground to make a meal, and then put some of them back in, and then leave it until the next year and do the same thing over again. That's that's my kind of gardening. You know, that's the way I like to do it. It doesn't get much easier than that. Anyway, sunchokes. Yes, they are aggressive, and they like to colonize, and they'll do that. But you can manage them. You really don't need to fear them. You don't need to take, at least in my experience, all of the special precautions that people seem to suggest that are necessary. Although it's not that you shouldn't do that. I'm just saying I don't think you have to. If you're harvesting them and eating them, you're going to stay on top of them, at least in my experience. And they're not going to just magically colonize all of your land. I don't think they will. I think if you stay on top of them, they're just one more easy thing to grow that tastes good, that you can have in a garden that will tolerate lousy soil. So, great thing to add to a garden. I hope you found that interesting. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. Check out my podcast, maritimegardening.com. Don't forget to click the bell if you want to be indicated when I make new videos. And until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden. Thanks for watching.